stood alone in the snow that Christmas night. My cheeks still burned from my wife's slap. 22 people watched her accuse me of giving her an STD. 6 years of marriage and she destroyed everything in seconds. My own mother sat there silent. No one let me explain. They threw me out into the freezing cold without my coat, but they did not know something. I had been preparing for this moment, and I was about to make every single one of them regret what they did to me. Before I share what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from today. If you have ever been wrongly accused by someone you trusted, hit that like button. And if you want to see how I proved my innocence and exposed the real truth, make sure you subscribe and stay until the end. This story changed my life forever. I met Lauren 8 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party in downtown Denver. She had just graduated from college, full of energy and big dreams about conquering the marketing world. I remember she wore this simple blue dress that night, nothing fancy, but something about the way she laughed made everyone in the room turn their heads. I was 26 then, working my first real job as a software engineer. When she smiled at me from across the room, I felt my heart skip. We talked for 3 hours straight that night. She told me about her plans to work at a big agency to climb the corporate ladder to prove everyone wrong who said she was too ambitious for her own good. I told her about my boring coding job and my even more boring apartment. She laughed and said boring sounded perfect to her. 2 weeks later, we went on our first date. 2 years after that, I got down on one knee in the same spot where we first met. Our wedding was small but beautiful. Just 50 people in a garden ceremony outside Boulder. Lauren cried when she said her vows. I cried too, though I pretended it was allergies. We bought a modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs of Denver, nothing extravagant, but it was ours. She continued climbing at her marketing agency while I moved to a better tech company with a corner office and a salary that let us breathe easy. For 6 years, I thought we had built something unbreakable. We had our routines. Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday evening movies on the couch, date nights every other Friday. We talked about having kids someday, maybe in a year or two, when things settled down. I looked at Lauren every morning and thanked whatever force brought her into my life. But looking back now, I realize I was blind to what was happening right in front of me. About 4 months before that Christmas, Lauren started changing. At first, it was small things. She began working late 3 or 4 nights a week. When I asked about it, she said her agency landed a huge client and she needed to put in extra hours to impress the higher-ups. I believed her. Why would I not? She had always been driven, always hungry for success. I told her I was proud of her dedication. Then the phone habits changed. One evening, I noticed she had switched her password. When I mentioned it casually, she said her company required stronger security for work devices. Made sense. But then she started placing her phone face down whenever she set it on the table. She would leave the room to take calls, speaking in hushed tones, always returning with the same explanation, just a coworker asking about some deadline. The bedroom grew cold, too. When I reached for her at night, she would turn away. Too tired, too stressed, not feeling well, always something. I told myself work was draining her. I picked up more chores around the house, hoping to ease her burden. I cooked dinner more often, cleaned on weekends, gave her space to decompress. Nothing changed. If anything, she grew more distant. But I pushed those doubts away. Questioning your wife felt wrong. I trusted her completely. That trust would cost me everything. Christmas was approaching, and I was determined to make it special. The annual family gathering at her parents' house in Colorado Springs had been a tradition for 15 years. Her father, Richard, organized it every year, inviting everyone from grandparents to distant cousins. This year, 22 people would attend, including my own mother, Susan, who Lauren had insisted on inviting since my father passed away 3 years ago. I spent weeks searching for the perfect gift. Finally, I found a white gold necklace with a small diamond pendant, $3,000 more than I had ever spent on jewelry. I imagined Lauren's face lighting up when she opened it. I imagined us reconnecting, rediscovering what we had lost over those distant months. I even started researching romantic getaways for just the two of us after New Year. Maybe a cabin in the mountains or a beach resort in California. Somewhere we could talk, really talk, and find our way back to each other. Christmas morning arrived. I woke up early, nervous and excited. Lauren was already awake, scrolling through her phone in bed. I handed her the small velvet box with shaking hands. She opened it slowly, looked at the necklace, said thank you in a voice that carried no warmth. Then she set it on the nightstand and went back to her phone. Did not put it on, did not even try it against her neck to see how it looked. Just left it there like it meant nothing. I swallowed my disappointment and told myself she was probably just tired. We had a long drive ahead, about an hour to Colorado Springs. Maybe she would warm up later. The drive made everything worse. Lauren spent the entire trip texting someone, angling her screen away from me whenever I glanced over. Halfway there, her phone rang. She held up a finger, signaling me to stay quiet, then answered with a voice I barely recognized. Soft, almost tender. I could only catch fragments. I know. Later. Miss you too. When she hung up, I asked who it was. She said a coworker needed help with something urgent. Then she went right back to texting. My stomach churned. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. But I pushed the feeling down, told myself I was being paranoid. Today was about family, about celebration, about gratitude. I would not ruin it with baseless suspicions. I had no idea that in just a few hours my entire world would collapse. We pulled into her parents' driveway around 5 in the afternoon. Their 2-story colonial looked like something from a holiday postcard. White Christmas lights lined every window and rooftop. A giant wreath hung on the red front door. Through the frosted windows I could see people moving around inside, hear muffled laughter and music. Richard opened the door before we even reached the porch. He was a big man, former college football player with a handshake that could crush bones. But he always treated me like a son. He pulled me into a hug, slapped my back, asked how the tech world was treating me. I told him business was good. He grinned and said he always knew I was a smart one. Inside the house buzzed with activity. Diane, Lauren's mother, rushed over to hug us both. She complimented my sweater, said I looked healthy, asked if we were eating enough. Lauren's older sister, Megan, appeared next her husband, trailing behind with their 2 young kids. Megan punched my arm playfully and asked when we were going to give her some nieces and nephews. I laughed along, played the happy husband, shook hands with uncles and kissed aunts on the cheek. My mother, Susan, sat in a corner armchair, quiet as always. She had never been comfortable in large gatherings, especially since Dad died. I walked over, kissed her forehead, asked if she needed anything. She patted my hand and said she was fine. Lauren disappeared into the kitchen almost immediately. She said she needed to help her mother with dinner. But when I peeked through the doorway 20 minutes later, she was standing alone by the window, typing furiously on her phone. Dinner started at 7. We gathered around the long oak table in the formal dining room. Richard stood at the head, raising his glass, thanking everyone for coming, talking about how blessed they were to have such a beautiful family. I held Lauren's hand under the table. She did not squeeze back. The meal began. Conversations flowed. Plates were passed. I started to relax, letting the warmth of the moment ease my anxiety. Maybe I had been overthinking everything. Maybe Lauren was just stressed. Maybe after the holidays things would go back to normal. Then about 20 minutes into dinner, Lauren pushed her chair back and stood up. The table fell silent. She walked toward me, her face flushed red, her hands trembling at her sides. I looked up at her, confused about to ask if she was feeling okay. The slap came without warning. Her palm connected with my cheek so hard that my head snapped sideways. The crack echoed through the silent room. My ears rang. My skin burned. Before I could speak, before I could even process what had happened, Lauren started screaming. She told everyone I had given her an STD. She said I had been cheating on her for God knows how long. She called me disgusting, a liar, a betrayer. She said she found out last week when she went to the doctor. She said I was the only possible source because she had been faithful. She said she could not believe she had wasted 6 years on a piece of trash like me. The room erupted. Richard shot to his feet, his face turning purple with rage. He pointed at me and called me every name I had ever heard, and some I had not. He said if I did not leave immediately, he would throw me out himself. He said I was lucky he did not beat me senseless right there in front of everyone. Diane rushed to Lauren's side, wrapping her arms around her daughter, crying about how sorry she was, how she could not believe this was happening. Megan stood up and joined the chorus, screaming that I was garbage, that she always knew something was off about me, that Lauren deserved so much better. I tried to speak. I tried to say I had no idea what was happening, that I had never cheated, that there must be some mistake. But every time I opened my mouth, someone shouted me down. They did not want explanations. They did not want my side of the story. They had already made up their minds. I looked at my mother. Susan sat frozen in her chair, eyes fixed on the table, not saying a word. I stared at her silently, begging her to stand up for me, to tell them she knew me, to tell them her son would never do what they were accusing him of. She did not move, did not look up, did not speak. That silence hurt more than the slap. Richard grabbed my collar and dragged me toward the front door. I did not fight back. I was too shocked to resist, too numb to feel anything, except the cold disbelief spreading through my chest. He shoved me onto the porch and slammed the door in my face. I stood there in the falling snow, wearing nothing but a dress shirt. My jacket was still inside. The temperature hovered around 20 degrees Fahrenheit. My breath came out in white clouds. My cheek throbbed. My heart felt like it had been ripped out and stomped on. Through the window I watched them huddle around Lauren, comforting her, validating her. Not a single person looked toward the door. Not a single person wondered if, maybe, just maybe, they should hear my side. I pulled out my phone with numb fingers and called an Uber. The app said 30 minutes. I waited in the cold snow, collecting on my shoulders, trying to understand how my life had just imploded in the span of 5 minutes. When I finally got home, I found the locks changed. Lauren had been busy. I could not even get into my own house. I stood on my own porch for the second time that night, locked out, frozen, alone. I called Marcus, my best friend since college. He picked up on the second ring. I told him I needed a place to stay. He asked no questions, just gave me his address and said he would have the couch ready. He found me on his doorstep at 11 that night, still shivering, still in shock. We stayed up until 3 in the morning while I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back and shook his head. "None of this makes sense," he said. "You have never even looked at another woman." "I know," I replied, "but nobody believes me." The next few days were a nightmare. Lauren texted me demanding a divorce. She said her lawyer would take everything because of my infidelity. She said I would regret ever hurting her. She said I deserved to lose it all. Word spread fast. Her family told their friends, who told their neighbors, who told everyone in our social circle. Within a week, my reputation was destroyed. People who had known me for years refused to return my calls. Colleagues at work started whispering behind my back. Even strangers looked at me differently. 3 days after Christmas, my supervisor called me into his office. The company had received complaints about me, he said. Anonymous messages about my moral character. They were asking me to take indefinite leave while they investigated. I lost my job, lost my wife, lost my home, lost my family, lost everything. My mother still had not called. I spent those first days at Marcus's apartment barely functioning, could not sleep, could not eat, could not think straight. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Lauren's accusations, saw the hatred in their faces, felt the cold bite of that winter night. Marcus pushed me to fight back. He said I could not let them destroy me with lies. He said I needed to prove my innocence. On the 5th day, something inside me snapped, not broke, snapped, like a rubber band pulled too far, finally releasing. I was done being the victim. If they wanted a villain, I would show them what a real villain looked like. Marcus knew a private investigator named Greg, a former police detective with 20 years of experience digging up secrets people wanted to stay buried. I called Greg that afternoon and laid out my situation. He listened carefully, asked pointed questions, told me his fee was $5,000 with expenses extra. I had some savings set aside for a down payment on a new car. That plan was dead now. I wired Greg the money the same day. While Greg started his work, I scheduled a full STD panel at a clinic downtown. If Lauren was accusing me of infecting her, I needed medical proof that I was clean. The nurse drew my blood, swabbed everything that needed swabbing, told me results would take 4 days. I also hired the best divorce attorney in Denver, a woman named Patricia, who had a reputation for destroying cheating spouses in court. When I told her my story, she leaned back in her chair and smiled like a shark sensing blood. "Get me evidence," she said, "and I will make sure she walks away with nothing." 4 days later, my test results came back. Negative. Across the board. HIV negative, herpes negative, chlamydia negative, gonorrhea negative, syphilis negative. Every single test came back clean. I had never had an STD in my life, which meant it was medically impossible for me to have given Lauren anything. She got it from someone else. I sent the results to Patricia. She said this was excellent ammunition, but we needed more. We needed the source. We needed proof of who actually infected her. 2 weeks later, Greg delivered his report. Lauren had been seeing a man named Brandon for at least 6 months. Brandon was a senior manager at her agency. Greg had followed her to a hotel in Aurora 5 times over those 2 weeks. He had photos of them entering together, exiting hours later. He had video of them kissing in the company parking garage. He had timestamps, license plates, room receipts. But the real bomb was in the messages. Greg had cultivated a source inside the company who gave him access to some of Lauren's communications. The messages painted a clear picture. Lauren called Brandon baby. They discussed their latest hotel visits. They made plans for future rendezvous. And then there was one message that changed everything. 10 days before Christmas, Brandon sent Lauren a text. He said he had just tested positive for chlamydia. He told her she needed to get checked immediately. He apologized for not being more careful. Lauren knew. She knew exactly where the infection came from. She knew it was Brandon, not me. But instead of admitting her affair, she decided to flip the script. She would accuse me, first play the victim, turn her family against me, and walk away looking innocent while I lost everything. I read the report 3 times. My hands would not stop shaking. I felt rage and relief and disgust all churning together in my stomach. My wife had not just cheated on me, she had deliberately destroyed my life to cover her own sins. Patricia and I spent the next week preparing. We assembled every piece of evidence into a comprehensive package: photos, videos, text messages, medical records, everything dated, documented, irrefutable. Then Patricia reached out to Lauren's attorney. She requested a family meeting before the divorce proceedings began. She framed it as an attempt to settle things amicably, to avoid a messy court battle. Lauren's lawyer agreed immediately. They probably thought I was coming to surrender, to apologize, to beg for mercy. They had no idea what was about to hit them. The meeting was scheduled for January 20th at her parents' house. The same location as the Christmas dinner. The same people in attendance. Poetic justice, I thought. I arrived with Patricia at exactly 7 in the evening. I carried a laptop bag over my shoulder. Richard answered the door, looking at me like I was dirt on his shoe. He stepped aside without a word. The living room was arranged like a courtroom. Lauren sat in the center of the couch, flanked by her parents. Megan stood behind them with her arms crossed. Various aunts and uncles lined the walls. My mother Susan sat in the same corner armchair, staring at her hands. Lauren wore a smug expression like she had already won. She probably expected me to grovel, to admit fault, to offer a generous settlement just to escape with some dignity. I set up my laptop on the coffee table and connected it to their television screen. Nobody tried to stop me. They all just watched with confused curiosity. I stood up and faced the room. First, I said, "I want to show you my medical results from last week." I pulled up the document on the screen. Every test negative. The dates clearly visible. The clinic's official letterhead confirming authenticity. I explained what this meant in simple terms. I had never been infected with any sexually transmitted disease. It was therefore impossible for me to have transmitted anything to Lauren. The accusation she made on Christmas night was medically impossible. Murmurs rippled through the room. Lauren's face went pale. Then I showed them the photos, picture after picture of Lauren and Brandon. entering the hotel, leaving the hotel. His hand on her waist, her head on his shoulder, each image date stamped, location tagged undeniable. The murmurs turned to gasps. Next came the video. 23 seconds of footage from the parking garage. Lauren and Brandon kissing beside her car, his hands in her hair, her arms around his neck. Someone in the room cursed under their breath. Richard sat down heavily, his face gray. Finally, I showed them the text messages, the terms of endearment, the hotel reservations, and then Brandon's confession about testing positive, his warning for her to get checked, the date clearly showing it was sent before she accused me. She knew, I said quietly. She knew exactly where she got it. And she chose to blame me instead. Lauren jumped to her feet. "That is fake," she screamed. "He fabricated all of it. Those pictures are photoshopped. Those messages are forged." Patricia stepped forward with a folder of certified documents. Affidavits from Greg, confirming the authenticity of his surveillance. Digital forensics reports, verifying the messages had not been altered. Hotel receipts matching the dates in question. "The evidence is irrefutable," Patricia said calmly. "We have already submitted copies to the court." The room fell silent. Lauren looked around, desperately searching for support, finding none. Her mother had tears streaming down her face. Her father would not meet her eyes. Megan had uncrossed her arms and taken several steps back. Lauren began to cry. "Fine," she whispered. "Fine. I made a mistake. Brandon came after me when Drew was never around. Drew ignored me for months. I was lonely. I just wanted someone to pay attention to me." She kept talking, kept making excuses, kept trying to shift blame, but nobody was listening anymore. They had all seen the truth. I gathered my things and walked toward the door. Patricia followed behind me. I stopped at the threshold and turned back one last time. I looked at my mother, still sitting in that corner chair, still staring at her hands. "One word," I said to her. "That night when everyone was attacking me, I just needed one word from you. One voice saying maybe we should hear his side. One person who believed in me." Susan finally looked up. Tears were running down her wrinkled cheeks. "I was scared," she said. "I did not know what to do. Everyone was so angry." I nodded slowly. "I understand," I told her. "But I needed my mother, and she was not there." I walked out into the cold night air and did not look back. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Patricia was ruthless. Since Lauren was the one who committed infidelity, she walked away with almost nothing. I kept the house. I kept most of our joint savings. She got her clothes and her car and the shame she had earned. Brandon did not fare much better. When his wife discovered the affair, she filed for divorce immediately. The company found out about his relationship with a subordinate and terminated him for violating their workplace conduct policy. Last I heard, he moved to another state to start over. Lauren lost her job too. The scandal spread through her professional network. Nobody wanted to hire someone known for destroying their spouse with false accusations. Her family suffered their own consequences. Richard and Diane became pariahs in their social circle. People who had attended that Christmas dinner shared the story of what really happened. The couple who hosted elaborate holiday parties suddenly found themselves excluded from invitation lists. Megan called me twice to apologize. I let both calls go to voicemail. As for my mother, she reached out about a week after the family meeting. She left a long voicemail, crying, apologizing, begging me to forgive her. I listened to it 3 times before deleting it. It took me 2 months to call her back. Our conversation was short. I told her I understood fear, understood how overwhelming that situation must have been. But I also told her that her silence had wounded me deeper than anything Lauren or her family had done. She was my mother. She was supposed to be in my corner no matter what. She cried. She apologized again. She asked if we could try to rebuild. I said I needed time. I said I would reach out when I was ready. We talk occasionally now. Brief phone calls mostly about mundane things like weather and groceries. The easy warmth we once shared is gone. Maybe it will come back someday. Maybe it will not. I am learning to accept that some relationships are permanently changed by single moments of failure. The first few months after everything ended were brutal. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lauren's face, heard the accusations, felt the sting of that slap. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, reaching for someone who was no longer there. Marcus probably saved my life during that period. He dragged me to the gym even when I wanted to stay in bed. He forced me to eat when food tasted like cardboard. He listened to me rage and cry and spiral without ever judging or leaving. I started seeing a therapist, a kind older man named Howard who specialized in trauma and betrayal. Every Tuesday at 4 in the afternoon I would sit in his office and untangle the mess inside my head. He taught me that healing was not linear, that some days would feel like progress and others like starting over. He taught me that forgiving did not mean forgetting, and that I could let go of anger without excusing what was done to me. Slowly, painfully, I began to rebuild. I found a new job at a tech startup downtown. Better salary, better culture, better people. My new colleagues knew nothing about my past, and I intended to keep it that way. I started running in the mornings before work. Something about the rhythm of my feet on pavement helped quiet the noise in my brain. I ran my first half marathon 8 months after the divorce, crossed that finish line and cried like a baby. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage. People who welcomed me back without questions or conditions. We had barbecues and game nights and regular dinners where nobody mentioned Lauren's name. I learned to enjoy my own company again. Learned that being alone did not mean being lonely. Learned that I could find happiness without needing someone else to provide it. That Christmas changed everything. In the moment it felt like the end of my life. Looking back now, I see it was actually the beginning. I want to leave you with a few things I learned from all of this. First, the truth always finds a way to surface. No matter how convincing the lie, no matter how many people believe it, reality has a stubborn habit of revealing itself eventually. If you know you are innocent, never stop fighting to prove it. Second, pay attention to who stands beside you during your darkest moments. Crisis does not build character, it reveals it. The people who abandoned me when I needed them most showed me exactly who they were. I am grateful for that clarity, even though it hurt. Third, losing someone who was never truly loyal to you is not a loss. It is liberation. I spent years loving a woman who was capable of destroying me to save herself. Discovering that truth set me free. Fourth, your worth is not determined by what others think of you. 22 people looked at me that Christmas night and saw a monster. They were wrong. Their incorrect perception did not change who I actually was. Never let the judgment of others define your value. And finally, healing takes as long as it takes. There is no schedule, no deadline, no right way to recover from betrayal. Some days I still feel the weight of what happened. Other days I barely think about it. Both are normal. Both are part of the journey. That Christmas was the worst night of my life, but it led me to a better life than I ever imagined possible. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been falsely accused by someone you trusted? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, and your experience might help someone else going through the same thing. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this video. And if you want to see more stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for watching until the end. Thank you for giving me this space to share something so personal. Whatever you are going through right now, I hope you find the strength to keep fighting for yourself. I hope you find people who believe in you. And I hope you know that no matter how dark things seem, there is always a path forward. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.